My name's Robin, and I've always been the black sheep in my family. Since I was little, all I wanted to do was draw. I'd spend hours creating characters in my sketchbook, superheroes, animals, magical creatures, you name it. After high school, while everyone was heading off to college, I made what my family called the biggest mistake of my life. Instead of university, I enrolled in 3D modeling courses. I still remember my mom's face when I told her. She just stood there in our kitchen, dish towel in hand, looking at me like I'd lost my mind. "What do you mean you're not going to college?" she asked, her voice rising. "Your sister Jessica went to college. She has a real career now." "Yeah, Jessica. My perfect older sister, who did everything right according to our parents. College degree, office job, married to Tom right after graduation. The whole package." I tried explaining to them about YouTube, about how animators could make a living creating content. I'd gotten pretty good with my tablet and animation software, and I really thought I could make it work. "YouTube?" Dad scoffed one evening during dinner. "That's not a real job, Robin. You're going to live with us forever at this rate." The worst part was, at first, they were kind of right. My early animations barely got any views. I was making pocket change, if that. Every time Jessica and Tom came over for Sunday dinner, she'd make sure to bring it up. "Oh my God, Robin," she said one night, scrolling through her phone with this smirk on her face. "Have you seen the comments on your latest video? These people are savage." Tom leaned over to look at her screen. "Wow, they really are ripping it apart. Maybe animation isn't your thing, Robin." I saw how much they enjoyed it, Jessica's little smirk, the way she'd catch Mom's eye and they'd share this knowing look. Even Dad would shake his head and mutter something about wasting time on cartoons. "When are you going to find a normal job?" Mom would ask at least once a week. "You can't keep living in your little fantasy world forever." But here's the thing about me, I'm stubborn. Instead of giving up, I threw myself into improving. I studied successful channels, analyzed what worked and what didn't. I completely revamped my animation style, made my characters more dynamic, added better storytelling. The change didn't happen overnight. But slowly, steadily, things started picking up. 10 subscribers became 100. 100 became 1,000. Every time I hit a milestone, Jessica would roll her eyes and change the subject to her latest promotion or something. 3 years flew by like a time-lapse animation. My channel had grown beyond anything I could have imagined when I first started. The money was rolling in steadily now, sponsorship deals, merchandise, animation contracts. Every month, my bank account grew bigger, but I kept quiet about it. Let them think I was still struggling. I decided to drop the bomb during one of our regular family dinners. Jessica and Tom were there, as usual. Mom had made her signature lasagna, and everyone was picking at their food while discussing Jessica's latest work promotion. "I have an announcement," I said, setting down my fork. "I'm moving out next week. I've rented an apartment." The silence that followed was beautiful. Jessica choked a bit on her wine. "You what?" she sputtered, exchanging looks with Tom. "Where did you get money for an apartment?" "Dad, are you paying for this?" I took a slow sip of water, enjoying the moment. "Actually, my channel is doing quite well. Well enough that I could rent a house if I wanted to." Mom dropped her fork. The clatter against the plate was almost as loud as the silence that followed. "How much money are we talking about here?" Jessica demanded, her voice sharp. "There's no way you're making that much from YouTube." I just smiled and shrugged. "Enough." They peppered me with questions all through dinner, trying to get me to reveal exact numbers, but I kept my mouth shut. The next morning, I moved into my new apartment. It wasn't huge, but it was mine, well, rented, but still mine. No more judgmental looks over breakfast, no more snide comments about my little hobby. I threw myself into work even harder after that. My setup in the new apartment was perfect, a dedicated animation studio with all the equipment I needed. My style evolved, my storytelling got better, and my subscriber count kept climbing. The money kept flowing in, and for the first time in my life, I could shop wherever I wanted. I remember the first time I showed up at my parents' house for dinner wearing designer jeans and carrying a real leather bag. Jessica's eyes nearly popped out of her head. She kept staring at my purse throughout dinner, probably trying to figure out if it was real. "Is that Gucci?" she finally asked, trying to sound casual and failing miserably. "Maybe," I replied, hiding my smile behind my water glass. That's when things started to shift. It began with small things at first. Dad mentioning how the water bill was higher than usual. Mom casually bringing up how the refrigerator was making strange noises and might need replacing. "The property taxes went up this year," Dad said one evening, sliding into what I now recognize as his asking for money voice. "It's getting harder to keep up with all the bills." I wrote them a check right there at the dinner table. Why not? I could afford it. The look of relief on their faces made me feel good, like I was finally proving my worth to them. Pretty soon, it became a regular thing. The utilities needed paying? I'd handle it. The roof needed repairs? No problem. New appliances? Just tell me where to send the money. I was making more than enough to cover their expenses and still save for my own place. Life has a funny way of flipping the script on people. While my animation career was taking off, Jessica's perfect life was starting to show some cracks. She got pregnant with her first baby, and suddenly Tom's salary wasn't looking so impressive anymore. I first noticed something was wrong during a family dinner. Jessica wasn't wearing any of her usual expensive jewelry, and her designer clothes had been replaced with department store brands. She barely touched her food, just pushed it around her plate while Tom talked about rising rent prices. "Everything's so expensive now," Jessica said, bouncing her fussy baby on her knee. "Diapers, formula, clothes, they grow out of everything so fast." I caught her looking at my watch, a little splurge I'd bought myself to celebrate hitting 5 million subscribers. The old Jessica would have made some snarky comment about it. Instead, she just looked tired. That night, I logged into my banking app and set up a monthly transfer to her account. Not a huge amount, but enough to take the edge off. I didn't tell her it was from me at first, but she figured it out pretty quickly. "You don't have to do this," she said when she called me about it, trying to sound proud, but I could hear the relief in her voice. "I want to," I replied. "That's what sisters are for, right?" When I turned 26, I decided it was time to level up my business. Working from home was fine when it was just me, but I had bigger plans. I rented out an entire floor in an office building downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, the works. Then I started hiring other artists, talented people who shared my vision for creating amazing content. "You have your own company now?" Mom asked when I told them about it. "Like, a real office with employees and everything?" "Yeah," I smiled. "A whole team of animators. We're working on some really exciting projects." My success kept snowballing. I bought myself a beautiful apartment in one of those fancy high-rises with a doorman and everything. Then came the new car, nothing too flashy, but definitely nicer than anything I'd ever dreamed of owning before. I was even starting to look at houses, thinking maybe it was time for something bigger. Then Jessica announced she was pregnant again. She tried to sound excited when she told us over dinner, but I could see the worry in her eyes. Tom had lost his job a month earlier and was doing contract work that barely covered their existing bills. "We might have to move to a smaller apartment," Jessica said quietly after dinner, while we were doing the dishes. "The landlord's raising the rent again, and with another baby coming." I didn't even hesitate. "Don't worry about the rent. I'll cover it." And just like that, I became responsible for my sister's rent. The same sister who used to mock my little cartoons now lived in an apartment paid for by those very cartoons. She stopped making snide comments about my career choices after that. Amazing how money can change people's perspectives. Our Saturday family dinners had become a regular thing again. Every weekend, I'd drive over to my parents' house, where Jessica, Tom, and their kids would already be waiting. The food was always good, the kids were cute, and everything seemed perfect on the surface. But there was a new pattern I couldn't help noticing. The washing machine's making that weird noise again, Mom would say, carefully watching my reaction over her coffee cup. Tommy's growing so fast, Jessica would add. He needs a whole new wardrobe for school, and with the baby. It was always something. A broken appliance, school supplies, medical bills, house repairs. The hints weren't even subtle anymore. The property taxes have gone up again, Dad mentioned one Saturday, pushing his mashed potatoes around his plate. And the roof really needs work before winter. I always said yes. Why wouldn't I? My latest merchandising deal alone could cover their expenses for a year. Besides, it felt good to be able to help, to see their relief when I'd write another check or make another transfer. One night, while watching them all around the dinner table, Mom serving dessert, Dad telling one of his old jokes, Jessica's kids making a mess with their ice cream, I had an idea. How about a family vacation? I suggested. 2 weeks in Hawaii? You should have seen their faces. Mom actually dropped the serving spoon. Hawaii? Jessica whispered, like she was afraid saying it too loud would make the offer disappear. Are you serious? Dead serious. All expenses paid. The whole family. The trip was amazing. Seeing my parents experience their first real luxury vacation, watching Jessica's kids build their first sandcastle, even Tom seemed to relax for the first time in years. Mom cried when we had to leave. But I had an even bigger surprise planned. Mom and Dad's 35th wedding anniversary was coming up, and I wanted to do something special. They'd been driving the same old minivan for over a decade, and it was definitely showing its age. I went all out for the anniversary party. Catered food from their favorite restaurant, new outfits for both of them, decorations, everything. The house was packed with relatives and old friends, all celebrating their milestone. When it came time for gifts, I handed them a small box with a bow on it. Mom opened it, saw the car keys, and looked confused for a moment. "What's this?" she asked. "Look out the window," I told them. There it was, parked in the driveway, a brand new SUV with a big red bow on top. Not the most expensive car out there, but perfect for them, safe, comfortable, plenty of room for groceries and grandkids. They hugged me, tight enough to hurt a little. "We're so proud of you," Mom whispered in my ear. So proud. Looking back now, I should have noticed something off in their expressions when they said that. But I was too happy in the moment, too pleased with being able to give back to my family. Too blind to see what was really going on. It was a peaceful Saturday morning, 2 weeks after the anniversary celebration. Mom and Dad had gone shopping in their new car, excited to take it for a spin. I stayed behind at the house, wanting some quiet time in my childhood home. I wandered into Dad's office, where I used to spend hours doing homework at his big oak desk. Mom had been talking about organizing all the old family photos and documents piled up in the corner, and I figured I'd help out while I had some free time. It was like a trip down memory lane. Report cards from elementary school, Jessica's college acceptance letters, old family vacation photos, birthday cards we'd made as kids. I smiled at a particularly terrible drawing I'd done of our family when I was 4, stick figures with wildly disproportionate heads. That's when I noticed the manila envelope. It stood out among the yellowed papers and worn photo albums, crisp, new, official looking. It wasn't weathered like the other documents, the paper was still stiff, the edges sharp. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. Inside was a legal document, dated just days after the anniversary party. The heading read, "Last Will and Testament." My hand started shaking as I read through it, the legal jargon swimming before my eyes until I found the important part. All assets and property to be transferred to our daughter, Jessica Martin. I read it again. My name wasn't there. Not anywhere. Everything, the house I'd been helping pay for, the car I'd just given them, all of it, was going to Jessica. The paper trembled in my hands. I felt sick to my stomach. It wasn't about the money or the property, God knows I had enough of my own. It was what it meant. All those smiles, the hugs, the "we're so proud of you," had it all been an act? Time seemed to stop until I heard it, the sound of car doors slamming, followed by voices and footsteps approaching the house. The front door opened, and I heard Mom laughing about something. "Robin," she called out. "We're back. Where are you?" I stood up slowly, still holding the envelope, and walked to the living room. They were carrying shopping bags, both smiling and chatting about their trip, until they saw me. Until they saw what I was holding. The bags dropped to the floor. Mom's face went white as paper. Dad looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Would someone like to explain this?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the storm raging inside me. I held up the envelope, watching their faces. Mom recovered first. "Well, we were going to tell you." "When?" I asked. "Before or after you signed over everything to Jessica?" Dad stepped forward, trying to play peacemaker. "Now, Robin, it's not what you think." "Really?" I cut him off. "Because it looks pretty clear to me." That's when Mom's whole demeanor changed. Her face hardened, and she went on the attack. "How dare you go through our private papers," she shouted, her voice rising to that shrill pitch I remembered from childhood scoldings. "Who do you think you are, snooping through your father's office?" I let out a laugh that sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Private papers? In the house that I've been paying for? The house whose utilities I cover every month. Those private papers?" Dad cleared his throat. "Robin, be reasonable. You're already successful. You have your own money, your own apartment. Jessica, she needs this more than you do." I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. "That's not the point, Dad. If you wanted to leave everything to Jessica, fine. But you could have talked to me about it. Instead, you went behind my back, right after I gave you a car, right after telling me how proud you were of me." "We don't have to explain ourselves to you," Mom burst out. "We're your parents. We can do what we want with our property." "Your property?" I repeated. "The property I've been maintaining? The bills I've been paying? That property?" "Give me that envelope," Mom demanded, holding out her hand. "And I think you should leave. And don't come back until you learn some respect." I stood there for a moment, looking at these people who I thought I knew. My mother, red-faced and angry. My father, unable to meet my eyes. I placed the envelope carefully on the coffee table. "Keep it," I said quietly. "Keep all of it." I walked out without another word, got in my car, and drove home to my apartment. I was just stepping out of a hot shower, trying to process everything that had happened, when my phone rang. Jessica's name flashed on the screen. "How dare you," she screamed, before I could even say hello. "How dare you try to steal my inheritance? You're already rich. Why do you need Mom and Dad's house too? God, you're so greedy." "I don't want the house," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "I just..." "Liar, you've always been jealous of me." "Well, guess what? Mom and Dad know what's best, and they chose me. Jessica, I'm literally paying your rent right now." "Oh, here we go," she shrieked. "Always throwing your money in everyone's face. That's all you care about, isn't it? Money, money, money." I felt a laugh bubbling up, a slightly hysterical one. "I care about money? Me? That's rich, coming from you. You think you're so much better than everyone else just because." I hung up. Just hit the red button mid-rant and tossed my phone onto the couch. Then I walked to my window and looked out at the city lights, letting the quiet of my apartment wash over me. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to take deep breaths. In, out, in, out. I threw myself into work after that day. My team was amazing. They didn't ask questions about my mood, just helped me channel everything into our newest project. We were creating something special, a series that would push our animation skills to the limit. Then Friday afternoon, my phone lit up with Mom's name. "Robin?" Her voice was softer than it had been during our last encounter. "We need to have a family dinner tomorrow. A serious conversation." When I pulled up to the house Saturday evening, I saw Jessica's car already parked in the driveway. Great. The whole gang was indeed there: Mom, Dad, Jessica, and Tom, all seated around the dining room table like some kind of family tribunal. Mom had made pot roast, my favorite. The smell filled the house, but nobody was eating. They all watched as I took my seat, the silence heavy and uncomfortable. Dad cleared his throat. "Robin, we've made a decision." I waited, looking at their faces one by one. Jessica couldn't hide her smirk. "We're transferring the house to Jessica's name," Mom announced. "Right away. We've already talked to our lawyer." Before I could respond, Jessica leaned forward, her expression sickeningly sweet. "Just to make sure you can't contest the will later, you understand. We have to protect our family's interests." "Protect our family's interests," I repeated slowly, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. I looked around the table again, really looked. At Mom, who'd cried tears of joy when I gave them the car. At Dad, who'd hugged me and said he was proud of me. At Jessica, who lived in an apartment I paid for. At Tom, who hadn't been able to provide for his family and let me pick up the slack. And suddenly, everything became crystal clear. "You know what I just realized?" I said, pushing my chair back and standing up. "I've been such an idiot. This whole time, I thought I was helping my family. But I wasn't helping family, I was feeding an ATM machine." "What are you talking about?" Mom demanded. "I'm talking about how you all see me. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, just as a convenient source of money." "Well, guess what? The ATM is closed." "Robin," Dad started, but I cut him off. "Starting today, I'm done. No more paying your bills. No more covering your rent, Jessica. No more gifts, no more transfers, nothing. You want to play games with inheritance? Fine. But you can do it with your own money." Jessica's face went from smug to panicked in an instant. "You can't do that. Watch me." "Robin, be reasonable," Mom pleaded, her voice rising. "We're your family." "No," I said, my voice steady. "Family doesn't do what you did. Family doesn't smile to your face while stabbing you in the back. Family doesn't take and take and take and then treat you like this." They all started yelling at once, Mom crying, Dad calling my name, Jessica screaming about how selfish I was, Tom trying to talk about the kids. Their voices followed me down the hallway, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing for days after that dinner. Texts, calls, voicemails, all of them ranging from guilt-tripping to outright hostile. I didn't respond to any of them. Then Mom took it to Facebook. I knew it was coming. She'd always been the type to air family drama online when she couldn't get her way in person. "I never thought my own daughter would be so selfish," her post began. "After everything we've done for her, she's abandoned her family in our time of need. A child's duty is to help their parents, but some children only think of themselves." I read it with a sort of detached amusement. The comments started rolling in immediately, but not quite the way Mom expected. "Isn't this the daughter who's been paying all your bills?" one of our cousins wrote. "Wait, the one who bought you a new car for your anniversary?" added an aunt. "The same one who paid for your Hawaii vacation," someone else chimed in. Jessica jumped into the comments, calling me an evil, envious thing who can't stand to see others happy. Mom liked her comment, of course. That was the final straw. I picked up my phone and called the insurance company that handled the car I'd given my parents. The car that was still registered in my name. "Hi, I need to report my car for repossession," I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. "Yes, I have the paperwork right here." They were efficient, I'll give them that. The tow truck arrived at my parents' house early the next morning. I got the confirmation text just as I was starting my workday. That's when my phone really exploded. "How dare you take our car? You evil witch, we trusted you." This is theft. We'll call the police. I read through their messages with a strange sense of calm. Then I opened my contacts and started blocking numbers. One by one, I cut off every avenue they had to reach me. That was 6 months ago. I haven't spoken to any of them since. I hear things through the family grapevine sometimes, Mom and Dad struggling to pay their bills, Jessica and Tom having to downsize to a smaller apartment. But it's not my problem anymore. Instead, I've been focusing on myself. Every penny I used to spend on them now goes into savings for my dream house. I'm looking at properties with big yards and plenty of space for a home animation studio. Maybe I'll get a dog. I've always wanted one, but never had the time or energy while dealing with my family's drama. My YouTube channel is doing better than ever. Turns out it's amazing how much creative energy you have when you're not constantly managing other people's crises. My team and I just hit 10 million subscribers, and we're expanding into new projects I never would have dreamed possible before. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. Then I remember finding that will, seeing the truth about how they saw me laid out in black and white. I think about all the times they laughed at my dreams, only to turn around and demand the fruits of those same dreams. Some people might call me cold for cutting off my family. But here's the thing, they stopped being family long before I stopped sending money. They just didn't bother to tell me. I had to find that out for myself, buried in a manila envelope in my father's office.
Brad, why can't we just be together openly? I muttered under my breath as I heard those words from my husband's office. My heart pounded in my chest as I froze outside his door, eavesdropping on the heated conversation between him and Tara, our young business partner. Trust me, Tara, we need to keep this quiet a little longer, Brad's voice responded, laced with a tenderness I hadn't heard from him in years. A sick feeling washed over me as the realization dawned. My husband of 20 years was having an affair with our employee, right under my nose. Memories flashed through my mind, taking me back to the early days when Brad and I had started our tech company from scratch. We were young, ambitious, and blissfully in love, working tirelessly alongside our small team to make our dream a reality. Tara had joined us fresh out of college, her youthful energy and innovative ideas quickly making her an invaluable asset. Funny how things can change so drastically without you even realizing it. As the business grew, so did Tara's influence over Brad. I noticed her overly friendly demeanor, the way she would linger a little too long during their conversations, and how Brad seemed increasingly enamored with her ideas. At first, I brushed it off as professional camaraderie, but the nagging feeling in my gut only intensified with each passing day. Then came the late nights at the office, the unexplained absences, and the sudden influx of suspicious charges on Brad's credit card statements. I tried to confront him, but he always had an excuse ready, dismissing my concerns with a wave of his hand. One fateful evening, I decided to follow my instincts. I tailed Brad and Tara to a luxurious hotel downtown, my heart shattering as I witnessed them entering hand in hand, laughing and completely oblivious to my presence. Funny seeing you two here. Planning a business meeting? I called out, my voice dripping with sarcasm as I stepped into the lobby, Brad's face drained of color, his excuses tumbling out in a jumbled mess. But Tara, that conniving little vixen, simply smirked and said, "Oh, Jenna, don't be so naive. Brad and I are in love, and there's nothing you can do about it." In that moment, something inside me snapped. The years of loyalty, sacrifice, and emotional investment I had poured into our marriage and business came crashing down around me. I would not be the one left broken and humiliated. Not this time. The next morning, I marched into the best divorce attorney's office, determined to fight for every penny of the empire Brad and I had built together. If he thought he could simply discard me for his younger mistress, he had another thing coming. As the dust settled from my initial confrontation with Brad and Tara, I found myself retreating into memories of happier times, back when our dream was just taking shape. Those early days were a whirlwind of sleepless nights, fueled by passion and an unwavering belief in our vision. Brad and I had met fresh out of college, both brilliant minds with a knack for coding and an insatiable drive to create something revolutionary. We scraped together every penny we had and rented a dingy little office space, assembling a ragtag team of fellow tech enthusiasts who shared our ambitious goals. Mark, our trusty developer, was the first to join us, bringing his unparalleled coding skills and a wicked sense of humor that kept our spirits high during the toughest moments. Then came Linda, a fierce legal eagle whose sharp wit and strategic thinking became invaluable assets as we navigated the treacherous waters of startup life. Those early years were a constant uphill battle, with more setbacks than successes. But through it all, Brad and I remained a united front, our love for each other and our dream fueling our persistence. We worked tirelessly, often pulling all-nighters to meet deadlines and secure funding. "You two are crazy. You know that?" Linda would tease, shaking her head as she found us hunched over our laptops at 3 a.m., sustaining ourselves on stale donuts and lukewarm coffee. "Crazy's the only way to make it in this business," Brad would retort with a mischievous grin, his eyes sparkling with determination. And make it we did. Against all odds, our little startup began to gain traction, attracting the attention of major investors and industry heavyweights. With each success, our team grew stronger, our bond forged through countless battles and shared triumphs. That's when Tara joined us, fresh-faced and brimming with ambition. At first, I welcomed her enthusiasm, never suspecting the serpent that lurked beneath her innocent facade. Little did I know that her arrival would mark the beginning of the end for the life I had so carefully crafted. "Jenna, darling, you really should let me handle the investor meetings from now on." She would purr, her words dripping with false concern. "You've been working so hard lately, you deserve a break." Foolishly, I brushed off her comments, blinded by the success we were enjoying and the unwavering trust I had in Brad. But with each passing day, Tara's influence over him grew stronger, her venomous words slowly poisoning his mind against me. As I delved deeper into the betrayal, the memories of our early struggles took on a bittersweet tinge. The very foundations upon which we had built our empire were now crumbling beneath the weight of lies and deceit. But even as the sting of Brad's infidelity threatened to consume me, a newfound determination took root. If they thought they could simply discard me like yesterday's garbage, they had severely underestimated the fury of a woman scorned. I would fight for what was rightfully mine, and they would rue the day they ever crossed me. As the months dragged on, Tara's infiltration into our once tight-knit circle became increasingly pronounced. Her sickly sweet demeanor would quickly sour the moment Brad left the room, replaced by a calculating coldness that sent shivers down my spine. "You're looking a bit worn out today, Jenna," she would simper, her ruby-red lips curled into a patronizing smile. "Maybe you should take the afternoon off. Let the rest of us handle things." I would bite my tongue, forcing a tight-lipped smile as I watched her slink over to Brad's side, draping herself over him like a cheap suit. The way he would beam at her suggestive comments, oblivious to the venom she spewed the moment his back was turned, made my stomach churn. Worst of all were the investor meetings, where Tara would shamelessly flaunt her youth and charm, soaking up the attention like a preening peacock. I could see the hungry looks in the eyes of our potential business partners, their gazes lingering just a little too long on her exposed curves. "Fellas, eyes up here," she would purr, reveling in the spectacle she created. "Unless you'd like Jenna and me to give you a private demonstration later?" The grating laughter that followed those crude remarks was like nails on a chalkboard, but Brad seemed utterly entranced, hanging on her every word. "Tara's just being Tara," he would chuckle, brushing off my concerns with a wave of his hand. "You know how she loves to play up the sex kitten act for these old geezers." But I knew better. With each passing day, Tara's grip on Brad tightened, her insidious whispers slowly turning him against me and everyone else who had stood by us from the beginning. "You know, Mark's code has been looking pretty sloppy lately," she would murmur, her voice dripping with false concern. "Maybe it's time we brought in some fresh talent, get this project back on track." Before I knew it, longtime colleagues who had bled alongside us were being pushed out, replaced by Tara's hand-picked cronies. Her twisted tentacles were slowly tightening around our company, squeezing the life out of everything we had built. Yet, no matter how many warnings I issued, Brad seemed blissfully oblivious to her machinations, too besotted by her youthful charms to see the serpent lurking beneath. The final straw came when I overheard a heated argument between them, their voices carrying from the confines of Brad's office. "We can't keep funneling money into that offshore account, Tara," Brad hissed, his usual bravado replaced by a quivering uncertainty. "Jenna's getting suspicious, and the auditors are breathing down my neck." "Don't be such a coward, Bradley," Tara snapped, her honeyed tones replaced by a biting venom. "We're so close to having everything we've ever wanted. A little thing like your wife isn't going to stop us now." As the weight of her words crashed over me, a cold clarity washed away the final vestiges of denial. This went far beyond a mere affair. Tara's claws were dug deep into the financial lifeblood of our company, and she was bleeding us dry. In that moment, I knew there was only one path forward: to fight with every ounce of my being to excise this malignant tumor before it destroyed everything we had worked so hard to build. The gloves were finally off, and I would show no mercy. After weeks of mounting suspicion and piecing together the twisted web of lies, I decided it was time to catch Brad and Tara red-handed. I hired a private investigator to track their movements, and sure enough, the sleazy truth was unveiled. They had been carrying on their sordid affair at a luxurious hotel downtown, using company funds to finance their trysts. The thought of them squandering the money we had poured our blood, sweat, and tears into made my blood boil. One evening, as the investigator's report placed them at the hotel, I took matters into my own hands. Gripping the steering wheel with white-knuckled fury, I tailed them from a distance, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and grim determination. As I pulled up to the opulent entrance, I spotted their car parked brazenly in the valet area. Taking a deep breath, I strode through the revolving doors, my heels clicking against the marble floors like a death knell. There they were, ensconced in a plush sofa in the lobby bar, Brad's arm draped possessively around Tara's waist as she giggled and batted her lashes at him. The sight of their twisted intimacy made my stomach churn. "Funny seeing you two here," I announced, my voice ringing out like a gunshot in the hushed ambience. "Planning a business meeting, I assume?" Brad's head whipped around, his face draining of color as he registered my presence. "Gee, Jenna, what are you doing here?" Tara, however, simply rolled her eyes and took a languid sip of her cocktail. "Oh, please. Spare us the theatrics, Jenna. We both know you've been aware of our little arrangement for quite some time now." Her brazen admission hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. All the months of suspicion and gut-wrenching doubt came crashing down in that moment, leaving me reeling. You vile little snake," I spat, my carefully cultivated composure crumbling. "How could you, Brad? After everything we've been through together?" Brad's mouth opened and closed like a gasping fish, his excuses dying on his lips as Tara calmly stroked his arm in a sickeningly possessive gesture. "Don't be so dramatic, Jenna," she purred, her voice dripping with contempt. "Bradley and I are simply pursuing our happiness together, something you've clearly failed to provide him with." Her words lanced through me like white-hot daggers, laying bare the insecurities and inadequacies I had grappled with for months. But even as the emotional floodgates threatened to burst open, something hardened within me, a steely resolve forged in the fires of my rage. "You want dramatic?" I snarled, leaning in until I was nose to nose with the smirking viper. "I'll show you dramatic, you backstabbing little tramp." Straightening up, I turned to Brad, who visibly shrank under my withering glare. "Don't even think about coming home tonight. In fact, don't bother coming home at all. I'm filing for divorce first thing in the morning, and I'm taking you for every last penny you're worth." Spinning on my heel, I stormed out of the lobby, my head held high despite the maelstrom of emotions raging within. The battle lines had been drawn, and there would be no quarter given. They wanted war? They had just declared it on the wrong woman. True to my word, the next morning I marched into the office of the most cutthroat divorce attorney in town and laid everything on the table. The anger and humiliation still burned hot within me as I recounted the sordid tale of Brad's betrayal and Tara's underhanded machinations. "I want everything," I growled, slamming my fist on the desk for emphasis. "The house, the cars, a majority stake in the company, and I want that little snake Tara out on her ass." The shark-like grin that spread across the lawyer's face told me I had come to the right place. "Consider it done, Mrs. Thompson. We're going to bleed your soon-to-be ex-husband dry." With those words, the legal firestorm was unleashed. I hit Brad with divorce papers faster than he could say irreconcilable differences, leaving him and his little mistress reeling. Of course, the two degenerates didn't go down without a fight. Brad sauntered into the office the next day, Tara clinging to his arm like a remora to a shark, both wearing matching sneers of arrogant disdain. "You really think you can take this company away from me, Jenna?" Brad scoffed, puffing out his chest. "I built this empire from the ground up. You were just along for the ride." "That's right," Tara chimed in, her shrill voice like nails on a chalkboard. "And now that Brad and I are together, we're going to take this business to even greater heights. You won't get a penny more than the courts decide." I wanted nothing more than to slap that smug look off her face, but I held my tongue. They could posture and bluster all they wanted. I knew I had them by the proverbial short and curlies. Thanks to the detailed records I had meticulously kept over the years, documenting Brad's shady dealings and Tara's financial chicanery, I had a legal sledgehammer poised to crush their delusions of grandeur. "You want to play hardball?" I asked, leaning back in my chair with a wolfish grin. "Fine by me. I've got enough evidence of your little slush fund scam to bury you both in civil and criminal charges." The blood drained from Brad's face as his bravado rapidly deflated. Tara, on the other hand, simply glared at me with undisguised hatred, her scarlet talons digging into Brad's arm. From that point on, it was open warfare. Our once thriving startup descended into a bitter battle zone, with each side lobbing legal salvos and vicious accusations. Loyal soldiers quickly rallied to my side, disgusted by Brad and Tara's flagrant betrayal. Mark, bless his brilliant but socially inept heart, became my unofficial tech wizard, quietly gathering evidence of Brad's financial misdeeds. Linda, with her razor-sharp legal mind, tore apart their flimsy fence piece by piece in deposition after deposition. Meanwhile, our board of investors grew increasingly uneasy with the turmoil, watching in horror as the shining jewel of our company became tarnished by the endless cycle of scandals. Still, through it all, Brad and Tara maintained their aura of delusional confidence, secure in their belief that his stranglehold on the business would carry the day. Little did they know, their downfall was merely a matter of time, and I would be the one delivering the killing blow. The day of reckoning finally arrived, and the air in the courthouse crackled with tension as Brad, Tara, and I squared off before the stern-faced judge. Despite their bravado, I could see the first flickers of doubt in their eyes as the weight of the evidence against them became impossible to ignore. "You won't get a penny more than the courts decide, Jenna," Brad hissed under his breath, his lips curled in a sneer. "I control this company. It's mine." Before I could respond, the bailiff called the courtroom to order, and the proceedings began in earnest. I watched with grim satisfaction as my legal team methodically dismantled Brad and Tara's defense, presenting a mountain of damning evidence that left them squirming in their seats. Financial records detailing their embezzlement schemes, caught on tape conspiring to funnel company funds into offshore accounts, even secretly recorded audio of Tara coercing Brad to cut me out of the business entirely. It was all laid bare for the world to see. With each bombshell revelation, Tara's smug veneer cracked a little more, her perfectly coiffed mask slipping to reveal the vicious snake lurking beneath. Brad, for his part, simply sat in stunned silence, the reality of his impending downfall slowly sinking in. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the judge banged her gavel, calling for order in the courtroom. "In light of the overwhelming evidence presented," she began, her steely gaze sweeping over the trio of co-conspirators, "I am ruling in favor of Mrs. Thompson on all counts." A collective gasp rippled through the gallery, but I simply sat back and allowed a small, victorious smile to spread across my face. The old bat wasn't done yet. "Mr. Thompson and Ms. Roberts, your actions have not only violated the sanctity of your marriage vows, but have also shown a blatant disregard for corporate ethics and the law itself," the judge continued, her voice laced with disgust. "As such, I am awarding Mrs. Thompson a controlling stake in the company, effective immediately, as well as the entirety of the marital assets." Tara let out a strangled shriek of outrage, her perfectly manicured claws digging into the wooden bench as she fought to maintain her composure. Brad, on the other hand, simply slumped forward, his head cradled in his hands as the weight of his defeat crushed him. But the judge wasn't finished. Leaning forward, she fixed them with a piercing glare that could have melted steel. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for a full investigation into potential criminal charges related to fraud, embezzlement, and corporate malfeasance. You two have made a mockery of the legal system and the values this company was built upon, and you will face the full consequences of your actions. As the bailiffs led the disgraced pair away in handcuffs, Tara still screeching obscenities through her smeared makeup, I couldn't help but savor the sweetness of victory. They had underestimated me at every turn, secure in their belief that they could simply trample all over me and walk away unscathed. Well, they were about to learn just how wrong they were, and I would delight in grinding their precious empire into the dust beneath my designer heels. With the legal battle decisively won, and Brad and Tara's misdeeds laid bare, I wasted no time in asserting my new control over the company. My first order of business? Clearing out the rot that had infested the ranks thanks to their toxic influence. One by one, I handpicked Tara's gaggle of sycophants and tossed them out on their oversculpted behinds, reveling in the looks of abject horror on their stunned faces as security escorted them from the premises. But Miss Roberts assured us we would be taken care of. One particularly vapid little thing sputtered, her fake lashes fluttering in panic. I simply shrugged, utterly unmoved. Well, Miss Roberts isn't calling the shots anymore. I'd suggest finding a new sugar mama to leech off of. With the dead weight jettisoned, I set about rebuilding our once proud company from the ground up, surrounding myself with trusted allies like Mark and Linda. They had stuck by me through the darkest days of the legal firestorm, and their loyalty would be rewarded tenfold. Of course, Brad and his slithering paramour didn't go quietly into the night. Even from behind bars, they launched a vicious media smear campaign, painting me as a heartless, vindictive shrew determined to destroy everything they had built. Jenna Thompson is a bitter, jealous woman lashing out at her ex-husband out of sheer spite, Tara whined to anyone who would listen, her voice trembling with faux indignation. She's taking her revenge too far and jeopardizing the livelihoods of hundreds of innocent employees. I simply smiled and shook my head at their pathetic attempts to sway public opinion. The evidence of their misdeeds was too overwhelming, the stench of their corruption too overpowering to be washed away with a few crocodile tears. As the weeks ticked by, their once formidable empire began to crumble around them, a self-inflicted wound caused by years of shady dealings and gross mismanagement. Business partners jumped ship in droves, repulsed by the stain of scandal. Investors clamored for their money back, unwilling to be dragged down with the sinking ship. All the while, I watched from the sidelines with a mixture of vindication and pity. These were the same two arrogant fools who had smugly assured me that they controlled everything, that I was simply a footnote in their grand narrative. Yet with each passing day, their grandiose delusions withered further, until they were left with nothing but the ashes of their shattered legacy. And I, the woman they had so callously discarded, was there to sweep up the remains and rebuild an empire worthy of the sacrifices that had been made. The final insult came when their former colleagues, desperate to salvage what was left of the business, came groveling to me with an offer to buy out the remaining assets at a fraction of their worth. I could have dragged out the negotiations, bled them dry as payback for the anguish they had put me through. Instead, I simply smiled, slid the contract across the table, and said, "Just get it over with, boys. I have a new empire to build." As they scurried away with their tails between their legs, I leaned back in my chair and allowed the vindication to wash over me. The ultimate revenge? Reducing Brad and Tara's grandiose dreams to a mere footnote in the legacy I was crafting for myself. In the months that followed, the tables well and truly turned on Brad and Tara. As I thrived in my new role at the helm of my own blossoming entrepreneurial ventures, they found themselves drowning in a cesspool of their own making. The money, the status, the glamorous lifestyle they had so desperately coveted, it all slipped through their greedy fingers like fistfuls of sand. With each passing day, news of their downward spiral made the headlines, a sordid tale of hubris and karma come full circle. Former tech mogul Bradley Thompson faces additional fraud charges, the headlines would scream, detailing the latest revelations of financial malfeasance. Tara, for her part, fared no better. Her youthful looks, once her greatest asset in ensnaring hapless men like my former husband, withered under the harsh glare of public scrutiny. No amount of overpriced cosmetic procedures could hide the haggard, haunted look in her eyes as the walls closed in around her. Disgraced socialite Tara Roberts spotted in seedy motel, the tabloids would crow, plastering unflattering photos of the fallen temptress across their sleazy pages. I'll admit, there was a perverse sense of satisfaction in watching their downward spiral play out in such spectacular fashion. These were the same two vipers who had once looked down their noses at me, secure in their belief that they held all the cards. Now the roles were reversed, and I was the one calling the shots. An inescapable truth that seemed to torment them more than any prison sentence or financial ruin ever could. "You haven't seen the last of me, Jenna," Tara snarled during one of her increasingly unhinged television interviews. "Mark my words, I'll be back on top before you know it, and you'll be the one groveling at my feet." I simply chuckled at her empty bravado, secure in the knowledge that her words carried all the weight of a deflating balloon. She was a spent force, a cautionary tale of what happens when ambition and greed consume one's moral compass. As for Brad, well, his fate was perhaps the most tragic of all. Once a proud, ambitious man with the world at his feet, he had been reduced to a hollow shell of his former self, his spirit broken by the weight of his own misdeeds. During his highly publicized trial, I watched from the gallery as he shuffled into the courtroom, his shoulders slumped, his eyes downcast. Gone was the cocksure swagger, the easy charm that had once made him so magnetic. In its place was a haunted, defeated man, the consequences of his actions finally coming into stark relief. In the end, both he and Tara were handed lengthy prison sentences, along with crushing financial penalties that would ensure they could never again regain a foothold in the business world. As the judge read out their fate, I caught Brad's gaze, his hollow eyes silently pleading for, what? Understanding? Forgiveness? I simply held his stare, my expression impassive, until he finally dropped his head in resignation. There would be no absolution, no second chances. He had made his bed, and now he would lie in it, forever branded as the man who threw away everything for a pretty face and a few fleeting moments of pleasure. As I stepped out into the brilliant sunshine, leaving the sordid spectacle behind, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over me. The long, arduous road I had traveled, fraught with heartbreak and betrayal, had finally reached its end. A new chapter was beginning, one forged from the ashes of the life I had once known. And as I looked to the future, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the strength and resilience that had carried me through my darkest hours. "I've found the strength to reclaim my life and destiny," I murmured, more to myself than anyone else, "and no one will ever take that away from me again."